Welcome all. My name is Marinella, and we are very happy you are here tonight. We're going to speak in English, and if somebody needs translation to Greek, has to tell it now, because we can have somebody near him to say the translation in Greek. All the speakers are going to speak in English. So if somebody needs translation, please tell us. So somebody is going to stay near to you and make the translation. So nobody needs translation from English? No? Okay. Good. So tonight we're going to discuss about the 50 years of history of Cyprus. We have two speakers. One is Andros Pagiatsos. He is Cypriot, but he lives in Greece, and he's going to speak from Zoom connection. He's in Kıbrıslı, a leftist organization in Greece. And we have also here Ali Şahin.
Yes.
He's from the Bayamislik Yolu, which means path with repentance, and exactly who knows them in Greek. And we want to tell you that we want to record the speeches and also the interventions if there are any. If somebody doesn't want to be recorded, it's okay. We stop the recording and can make the contribution or the question or whatever you like. So we will give around 15 minutes to our speakers, and then we will give around 5 minutes to everybody who has a question, some questions or contributions. We put this time because if not, it's going to be around 12 o'clock in the night. So we respect your time and and we know that it's difficult to stay a long time sitting in these chairs. For the beginning, we have just to say that these organizations is for three political groups. One is DiEM25, the other one is NEDA, and the other one is Bayamislik Yolu, as you saw in the Facebook announcement. And I will invite Valentinos from DiEM to make a small intervention, like introduction. And then we begin with Andros Pagiatsos from Greece, and after Ms. Ali in Cyprus. No, only 3 minutes. It's like introduction. Okay. Okay.
Hi everyone, thank you. I'll be very, very brief. I won't take out of our speakers' time. So the so-called 1974, but decades earlier. Its emergence has to do with the involvement of many individual actors and their attempt to control Cyprus for their own individual benefit. The first factor has to do with the cares of the significance of the geographical location of the island in the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, next to the Middle East and very close to the Suez Canal. An unsinkable fortress that gives a strategic territorial advantage to whomever controls it in the wider region. This is why the British colonialists have tried to prolong their presence in Cyprus for much longer than in other colonies. They highlighted and magnified differences between the communities, tried successfully, unfortunately, to turn one community against the other. Turkey is another such factor. Taking advantage of its military might and its geographical location adjacent to Cyprus, it imposed conditions of suffocating control over the Turkish Cypriot community on the basis of ethnic and territorial separation, leading some to extreme conservative rationales that started and ended with the idea of fascism. When Turkey was handed the opportunity by the Greek junta and its coup d'etat, Turkey invaded the island. Greece is the third factor. It contributed historically to the formation and cultivation of an extremely powerful national narrative that had Greek identity at its core, with the notion of enosis projected as the only way forward for the Greek Cypriot community. The total identification of the Greek state with NATO and the deep and extreme anti-communist logic was transferred here too, through the church and other mechanisms of the community, later to the state, to the schools, to the army, to all spheres of social, economic, and political life. The doctrine that our enemies are the communists and the Turks has largely determined political developments, and trends unfortunately continuing even today. The ensuing catastrophe would have been avoided had the leadership of the Greek Cypriot community elevated the values of justice, fairness, and equality above ethnic differences. On the contrary, this leadership did not honor its signatures and tried almost immediately to circumvent the treaties of the Anti-faşist alliance, while gradually shedding the delusion of enosis and leading to a strategy of promoting the independence of the Cypriot state, but considering this state to be solely Greek in terms of national identity. It devalued, degraded, abased, and fought against the legitimate collective interests and rights of the Turkish Cypriot community, gradually excluding it from the public, social, and political life, refused to rein in the Greek Cypriot paramilitary groups, allowing them to operate, spreading terror, creating thusly a regime of insecurity which forced Turkish Cypriots into enclaves and into the arms of Turkey. The most characteristic example of this was the attempt by Makarios to unilaterally alter the founding agreement in '64, which led to the armed bicommunal disturbances and the forced withdrawal of Turkish Cypriots from the state. Any attempt to solve the Cyprus problem does not take this climate into account or consideration is doomed to the problem, but also deliberately used it as a judges, for example, economic, environmental, employment, and other social issues. That's the introduction. Thank you very much.
Okay, comrades, good evening from Athens. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am particularly happy to be together with Turkish Cypriot brothers and sisters to have this discussion. And I'm sorry I'm not able to attend physically, which was my initial intention. So it's 50 years through the invasion, partition, war, division. And there are obvious questions. How did we get here? Could it be avoided? These are necessary questions that we need to try to answer. If we cannot find answers to these questions, then we won't be able to go forward. We won't be able to contribute to a solution of the present situation. A national problem that goes on for decades, but it's not just a Cyprus national problem. As we all know, it's a big issue between Greece and Turkey in general. With continuous tensions from both sides and with the threat of war looming every few years. As a short diversion, I want to start with a short diversion which is not strictly related to the problem in Cyprus, but is the more general Greek-Turkey situation. Let's look at the present issues causing tensions between Greece and Turkey, not only Cyprus, but also Greece and Turkey. It's the extraction of natural gas in southeastern Mediterranean. It's 100 rocks or uninhabited islands which exist in the Aegean, and they are considered to be neutral or unclear zones over which there is a threat of clashes between Greece and Turkey. And there is a continuous clash over the division of the seabed, of the Aegean Sea, and of the Aegean Sea itself. And the question is, do these have anything to do with the needs and the lives and the interests of ordinary working class people, either in Turkey or in Cyprus or in Greece? And the answer is no. But they have everything to do with the interests of the ruling classes in the three countries, which are competing between themselves for economic power, but also for expansion and domination in the broader region of the Balkans and the Middle East. So I'm starting with this because I want to make clear from the beginning that the character of these conflicts is a class one. It's a class character. It's a conflict between the interests of the ruling classes. And the same is the case with the development historically of the national question in Cyprus. 50 years after the war and the partition of the islands, the governments of both sides have not come to a solution. What is worse, there is no solution in sight. So we need to ask the question why? And we need to try to answer this not in a superficial manner, but by searching the roots of the problem for the lack of any progress. In theory, the two communities, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, could have lived in peace together, as used to be the case before the 1950s. But the launching of EOKA in 1955 meant that the initiative was in the hands of the nationalists, initially on the Greek side, but then on the Turkish side, Turkish Cypriot side as well. EOKA was led by a religious leader, an archbishop, Makarios. Politically and militarily, EOKA was led by a fascist, a far-right nationalist, Grivas. These two individuals were the leaders of the struggle, and therefore they gave it its concrete characteristics. And they had the impression that they could determine developments on the island and go for the union of Cyprus with Greece without taking into consideration the role of Turkey, it was inevitable that Turkey was going to react, and it was inevitable that there was going to be reactions in the Turkish Cypriot communities. In this contribution, I will not go into the history of the events. I will take it that most of the comrades present know the basic facts, but I will focus on some events and on 5 central political conclusions or lessons or points that stem from the history. And the first point I want to make is the following. Whenever the nationalists have the upper hand in any country, but particularly in our country, the end result is a disaster for the people. They do this, they follow their policies always in the name of the nation, in the name of patriotism, but the nation, from the point of view of the mass of the population, if we identify nation as the mass of the population, always pays a very high price. But of course, nationalism and patriotism do not fall from the sky. They are the ideology of the ruling capitalist class. The ideology of the working class and of the oppressed is internationalism. Now, to go on, we have to learn from history, but the ruling class will never describe history as it really is. It will always distort history. And for this reason, it's very important, I think, that in the last period, there is a real search into the history of what actually happened in the events that led to 1974 on the part of progressive left journalists, writers, and academics in documentaries and books who are doing groundbreaking and original work, actually discovering the real history, finding out the facts, and establishing what actually happened, particularly about the role of the far right-wing nationalists, the murder of Turkish Cypriots, the mass graves, etc. I am referring, of course, to Greek Cypriot journalists and writers. These activists, they are providing a great service to the people of Cyprus in the need to counter the Greek Cypriot propaganda, i.e., that the Greek Cypriots are the innocent victims of the Turkish invasion. And I suppose it's correct to expect and to greet similar developments in the Turkish Cypriot community. There is something we need to stress. The responsibility of the Greek left activists who are doing this investigation is first and foremost to reveal the crimes of the Greek Cypriot ruling class. And this is the basis on which working class people and the left like us can approach the Turkish Cypriot community on the basis of attacking our ruling class for its crimes against the Turkish Cypriots. In the 1960s, the constitutional arrangement collapsed. We had clashes, threats of invasion by Turkey, separation of the Turkish communities, of the two communities, with the Turkish Cypriots being forced to live in enclaves, the Turkish Cypriots being the main victims of all the clashes in the 1960s. Could this be avoided? This led to the war in 1974. Could all this be avoided? The answer is yes. If there existed a force that would fight against the nationalists and aim to unite the two communities, a force representing the interests of the working class people, the poor farmers, the oppressed, etc., who had nothing to gain from the killings and the divisions. This political party did exist. It was Akel. But it chose not to aim to unite the two communities against the nationalism of the ruling class, but it chose to tail end the government of Makarios. Akel was the oldest party, the best organized party, and the party that united in its ranks in the party, but also in PO, the trade union movement, both communities. Akel chose to tail end the government of Makarios in the name of supporting the progressive bourgeoisie, supposedly represented by Makarios, against the reactionary nationalist elements which were in close collaboration with the Greek military regime in the 1960s. So let me clarify, make clear that we're not looking for scapegoats from the long past. We're trying to establish if there was an alternative historical line of development. The fact is that Akel could have played a different role, mobilize the working class on both sides against the nationalists. But this would mean having to clash with the ruling class, and this would pose the question of power. Akel refused to raise the perspective, such a perspective, despite calling itself a communist party. Akel supported the nationalist archbishop who saw himself as a representative only of the Greek Cypriot community and not the whole of Cypriot people. Makarios would always start his speeches by addressing the Greek Cypriot people, not the people of Cyprus. And in his whole life as a president of the island, he never once visited one Turkish village. Akel was the only party which did not have a militia, an armed militia in the 1960s, and up to the 1974 invasion. Despite the fact that the Greek nationalists and the Turkish nationalists had their own militias, despite the fact that Makarios had a personal force, which was called a Fedriko, a paramilitary force, and despite the fact that the Socialist Party of Cyprus, EDEC, also had its own militia. In the context of everybody arming themselves to the teeth and preparing for battle, the strongest and best organized party on the island, representing the working class, chose to be passive. It actually chose to be an obedient ally in the service of Makarios. And this takes me to the second point that I want to emphasize as a political lesson from our history. And this is that Akel, in theory, could have determined a different course of development away from nationalism and away from intercommunal clashes if it had a different approach. But this had as a necessary requirement that it should clash with capitalism and imperialism. Akel's argument was, and still is, I suppose, that the international balance of forces did not allow for such adventures, in quotes. But if the 1960s and the 1970s, which represented the height of the colonial revolution against imperialism and colonialism did not represent a favorable balance of power, then there will never be a favorable period. Another point I want to touch upon is the fact that the invasion and the war created a situation on the Greek Cypriot side with very powerful revolutionary characteristics. Those conditions enabled a small party of a few hundred members to become a mass party of thousands with mass appeal. This was the Socialist Party of Cyprus, EDEK. Don't look at what EDEK is today, which today EDEK is a disgusting nationalist racist party. Nothing to do with that. But present-day EDEK has nothing to do with the EDEK of the period of 1974 until, let's say, the end of the decade. This party started as a party of democratic center in the 1960s, but it moved to the left because of its militant stand against the Greek junta, the military regime in Greece, and because of its determined struggle against the fascist gangs of Eoka II. EDEK had armed militias and close links to the Palestinian movement. Because of its militant stand, it attracted a generation of young Marxists who were searching for a way forward and who entered the party and pushed it decisively to the left. The youth of the party, called EDEN, was based on clear Marxist principles and analysis, and it propagated very boldly the ideas of revolutionary socialism. This is the 1970s, nothing to do with today, as I mentioned before. EDEK was the only left party, or the only party, to be accurate, to put armed resistance against the coup in 1974. And it was rewarded by the mass of the Greek Cypriot people. They rewarded the fact that for the fact that it put up armed resistance, and it had many victims through this battle. And this again attracted a new generation of the best elements of the Greek Cypriot youth, left radical youth, most of them leaving from Agel and coming to EDEK, in a society which was boiling with anger against the far right and the Greek junta, and the Greek nationalists, and of course, US imperialism. So EDEK was transformed into a mass force in a matter of a few months. I will give you an example. I was one of the school students who at a very young age entered the party at that stage. The example I want to give is how the youth of Doros Loizou was created in those conditions and what role this young organization, this youth organization played. In the beginning of October 74, when our families came down to Nicosia after having fled to the mountains because of the war, 5 school students, 5 of us, we gathered in a small room in the offices of EDEK, and we decided that we needed to create a school student organization. And we used the name of Doros Loizou, who was our teacher, and who was murdered by the fascists on October 30, a few weeks earlier. So we created this new youth organization, and we decided to call for a demonstration. And we invited school students from all schools to come to a meeting. And there was a big meeting of representatives of school students, but the meeting was divided. It was divided by us, the left, that we wanted a big demonstration. I think it was called on the 28th of October. A big demonstration against the Turkish invasion, but also against the role of the Greek government, the Greek junta, against the role of US imperialism, against the fascists. And then it was the other side, the nationalists or the fascists, that they only wanted to campaign against Turkey. So it was divided, it was split, and there was a big campaign for the success of this demonstration. It was a big victory for us, for the left, and it was a severe defeat for the fascists. We were able to bring out all the schools of Nicosia on the 28th of October, and the fascists were only able to gather about 150 people outside the Greek embassy, where they went to ask for support. I don't have the time to go into the details, but in an extremely short period of time, few weeks, few months, this youth organization developed cells of tens of members in every school, in every city in the country. And it was able to mobilize the masses of the school students, the masses of the youth, in very frequent demonstrations at that time. It was a period in which there was the feeling of tremendous power in this revolutionary youth that was developing, the revolutionary youth movement. There was a very high optimism about the future, despite the war and the coup that we had faced. We were looking towards the revolutions internationally, towards the Portuguese Revolution, towards the Spanish Revolution, and the colonial revolution that was on all three continents, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In other words, from the ashes of the war, from the ashes of the coup and the war, the hope of revolution, and of a new socialist society was emerging. This didn't last. But a huge fight developed. This didn't last for very long. But a huge fight developed inside the party, inside the Socialist Party, between the left wing, the revolutionary youth, and the old leadership. The leadership of the party moved to the right in a similar way to what Agel was doing the previous way. They capitulated to Makarios and they tail-ended Makarios. In 1980, the newspaper of the youth was banned and the editorial committee of the youth was expelled in 1980. This means there was a fight of 6 years there. It was a big battle inside the party. But the right wing won and destroyed the left wing, but it actually destroyed the party because it never managed to rebuild its forces. From then on, it moved to the right, moved to the right, moved to the right, to become the disgusting thing that we see today. This is the third main political point I want to make. The left was tested again in the 1970s in another historical conjuncture. This time it was not Agel. Agel was tested in the 1960s. This time it was the Socialist Party EDEC. Objectively, the potential for the creation of a mass revolutionary socialist party was there. But this historic opportunity was lost once again. Did something positive come out of this, however? The answer is yes. First, the experience of how a mass party can acquire mass proportions from a few hundred people into mass proportions and find itself in a position to lead the mass movements in extremely short periods of time. And the second main conclusion is that those battles and debates laid the basis for the development of the Marxist class approach of the national question of Cyprus that we see today in quite a number of anti-capitalist-led organizations in Cyprus. Let me go on to another important point. For 30 years, after 1974, the two communities lived separately together. They lived separately, apart, without any contact between them. And then 2004 came. That was the time of the rise of the Turkish Cypriot population. It was an amazing development, and I don't want to develop it because maybe the Turkish Cypriot comrades will develop this. But we were so impressed by it. It was so welcome by the lefts in the south. And actually, this rise of that period was not the only one, it was the first one. And then we had the development of more revolts by the Turkish Cypriots, not only against the Turkish Cypriot regime and government, but also against the regime of Erdogan in Turkey, which is so important. It was an amazing revolt, which was aiming at a solution to the national problem, but the solution never came. However, something else came, which seemed to be impossible. It was the opening of the borders. The wall was brought down because of the rise of the Turkish Cypriots. And this leads to another political conclusion. People have the power. Everybody knows the song, but it is not just words. If the mass of the people act as one united fist, there is no power that can stop them. This huge force was directed towards pressurizing the leaders, i.e. the representatives of the capitalist ruling class, to come to an agreement. It failed to achieve a solution, but it succeeded in bringing down the wall. The question is, how can we build similar movements in the future that can arrive to the end of the road? My last section deals with today. We see that the governments of both sides have failed after 50 years. After endless negotiations, no solution. And the reasons are quite straightforward. The Greek Cypriot ruling class has no reason to accept the solution unless it is able, through this solution, to have control over the north. We have good reasons to believe that the Greek Cypriot ruling class has come to the conclusion that they are not interested in a solution. They are fine as they are now. The Turkish Cypriot side, on the other hand, I mean the Turkish Cypriot ruling class, will not give up its independent status from the Greek Cypriot ruling class for the sake of a solution, because of the danger of being devoured by the much stronger Greek Cypriot bourgeoisie. So we have a deadlock. And this is not just a theoretical assumption. It is based on the reality of the past 50 years. So only forces that represent the popular masses can really make progress in solving the problem. But this perspective is so blurred by the fact that both Akel in the south and Çetepe in the north have been in power and have not made any progress as regards a solution to the problem. So it's not sufficient to have the left in power. It is crucial to clarify what kind of left forces are required by the situation. So what we need is parties of the left that will, one, accept that the solution can only be based on political equality between the two communities. This is particularly important on the Greek Cypriot side. That will not follow the line of the strategic interest of the respective motherlands, Greece and Turkey, but who will be ready to clash with the ruling classes in Greece and Turkey by appealing to the Greek and Turkish working class people. Third, we want left parties that will respect the right of self-determination of the Turkish Cypriot community, because it's the minority on the island. And fourth, of course, any such approach will mean a head-on clash with the fascist gangs, with the nationalists and the ruling classes on both sides. Who will take such a bold revolutionary stand? Unfortunately, it's not going to be Akel, and it's not going to be Çetepe. But before going on to my final conclusion, I want to say that if the ruling class was able or is able in the future to find a solution to the problem, we'd not only accept it, but we would support it. But the facts point to the entirely opposite direction. This brings me to my final political point. We need a mass anti-capitalist internationalist left with a clear Marxist ideology on both sides of the divide. This is not easy. We are still facing a hard time as organizations of the revolutionary left. We are facing a long cycle of retreat that began with the collapse of the Soviet Union around 1990 and still continues. But there is no other way. The task before us, after such discussions on the national problem or on other issues, is to afterwards sit round a table and discuss how we can rebuild the forces of the revolutionary left, both on a national and on international level. Thank you, comrades, and sorry for speaking a bit longer than initially planned.
Because there was also a technical problem. So Ali, if you need 2 minutes more? Okay, so please.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Andros, as well. Sorry, sometimes I'm going to look at you, and sometimes I'm going to look to the crowd. First of all, for myself and for the organization, which is Bağımsızlık Yolu, Independency Path, thank you for the invitation. So invitation come to me that how did we come to 74? That we're going to talk about from the perspective of the Turkish Cypriot revolutionaries, that how did we come to 74, and what can we do in 2024? So I think it's a good question to start that how did we come to 74, because it includes another two questions as well, which is what is Cyprus problem and when did it started? Because as you know, probably you know better than us, the Greek Cypriot nationalist leadership mostly mentioned that the Cyprus problem only started in 74. Turkey just invaded the north part of the island and everything just started. For the Turkish Cypriot or the Turkish nationalistic leadership, the Cyprus problem started in 63, 64, or even the EOKA time between TMT, which is in 50s. I think it's a good point to start about, because can we just mention an exact date about when did the Cyprus problem just established? I think we can't. Because we can't say anything about it, or after the TMT or after the class, especially just appears over the ruling classes of the two communities in Cyprus. There was lots of tension between, even in the end of the 19th century, but especially the nationalistic leaderships are growing as well, which on the other hand, the working class movement was growing also. But as the Andros said, there was only one organized power on the left, which was Akel. Akel was mainly based on just to organize about the political rights of the Greek Cypriots, not in the name of Greek Cypriots, which they say only Cypriots, but practically the history just shows and told us that when we say Cypriot, it doesn't mean that every time Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots are together, because of the tensions that I mentioned before, which means lack of trust in the 20th century. They were different needs of the people that should be covered by the political forces, which is not covered by the left, which was Akel. So I think after the establishment of the nationalistic organization, which was EOKA and TMT, as Andros said, the nationalistic power just upended the political forces in Cyprus. And over the process in 50s, imperialism found a new solution for the new conditions of Cyprus, which was establishing a new state, which is needed by the needs of the new imperialist period, because after the Second World War, the time was changing for the colonialism as well. Before that, the colonialism was ruling something like you just conquer some place, you put your flag and you just rule it. But after the Second World War, imperialism leadership changed already from UK to US. So US has a new mentality about the colonialism, which was new colonialism, which was appeared and established a new method in Cyprus as well, which was Cyprus Republic, Kypriaki Demokratia. So Cyprus Republic is a kind of a place which is gonna rebuild the colonial relations in Cyprus. They were gonna be as a view, they were gonna be free state, and democratic process about its own people, but economically and politically it's going to be controlled by the imperialist powers. And it was also another advantage for the imperialism as well, which was that it's going to solve the problem of any possible threats of the southern part of NATO, which could happen or appear between Turkey and Greece. But most of the time, the leftists in the Cyprus, they are saying Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots were all together, nothing happened, everything was perfect. All foreigners, imperialists come to island and divide all the people. Even though some part it was true, but Cyprus problem is not only a problem which was established by the external powers. There are two sides of this problem. One was external, the other one was internal dynamics. In the 60s, mostly these internal dynamics were taking actions. Even though there is a new state, the new forms of the paramilitary groups were still running. They still have in arms, and they still have plans about how they're going to take the control of their agenda and how can they establish the situation however they want. So in 63, after the clashes happened in Lefkosia, then it just moved around all the Cyprus in Bafo, Lefka, Gaziveran side, Limassol, most of the places. So we see after that period, the claim of the nationalistic leadership of the Greek Cypriot, which was Magarios, they were saying that Turkish Cypriot just uprise to the state. What was the claim of the Turkish Cypriot leadership? They were saying that the Greek Cypriot part, they don't let us to use our political rights about the state. That's why we don't want to just join into the state organization. That's the main claim of the nationalistic leadership of Turkish Cypriots. So when we look at the situation, maybe we can say these two agendas were particularly right. But when we look at the conditions of the Turkish Cypriot, as Andros said, the Turkish Cypriots were the unadvantaged side because of the conditions, not only the political or military, economically in most of the ways, they have to wait for the first actions of the Greek Cypriot leadership, then they are following it. When you look into the history, you mostly see that the Turkish Cypriot leadership, other the nationalist move. Something like, just think about, if there is Enosis, there's going to be Taksim. If there's going to be EOGA, there's going to be TMT. If there's going to be 15th of July, there's going to be 20th of July. Whatever. There are, because of the conditions, the nature of the Turkish Cypriot nationalistic leadership, it has to follow after the Greek Cypriot leadership. So there are too much historical details about what happened in 60s and 70s. But basically, we can say because of the clashes, and even though mostly we say division started in 74, we can see the two communities of the island started to divide already. Even though there's a still Turkish Cypriots in Bafos or Limassol, or you can see the Greek Cypriot in Amosto or Gerinia, but the life of the old Cypriots, I mean the Turkish and Greeks, started to separate each other. So that's why we can say the problem is not only something about 74. So what happened after that? We can see that these two communities started to take political claim more directly. I think, especially after 60s, there's an obvious reality in Cyprus, even though we like it or not. There are two folks, two peoples appeared in the Cyprus. they have their own agenda, they have their own nationalistic leadership, but whatever the leadership says, unfortunately, there are two folks started to appear in the island, which is called Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot. What were the Greek Cypriot leadership doing? They say Cyprus Republic is already controlled by the Greek Cypriots, so there's nothing to worry about what's going to happen to the state. And Turkish Cypriot leadership was saying it is better to just leave the Cyprus Republic, then Turkey going to come and divide the island, so we're going to make the Taksim this way. But after the clashes of 64 and 67, they realized that Turkey is not going to come so easily, because even they attempt to come to Cyprus in 64 and 67, because of the balance between the imperialistic powers, they didn't let Turkey to come to invade the island. So it's going to take long time till 74 to come. But I think whatever important is there, because of the divideness of the people, we see that there is need to be a left organization which has to take action about how these two folks going to come together and make these two people to come and live together again. But the problem is, as Andros said, in 60s or even in the 50s, the only organized power in the left was Akel, and Akel was chasing the dream of Enosis as well with Magarios. So they were claiming it's an anti-imperialist policy, which will prevent the interventions of the imperialist powers to the Cyprus. But as long as if they claimed that it was anti-imperialistic powers, there was nothing about the rights of the Turkish Cypriots or how the Turkish Cypriot working class going to do something about the future, about the Cyprus. There was nothing. So until 74, there were only few organizations started basically after the second half of the 60s, which was based on the teachers union and some students organization, which was basically that going to Turkey and start to join the revolutionary movement in Turkey. So I think the problem is about the 60s period, because of the first generations of the Turkish Cypriot leftist movement, they follow the Akel's agenda in 50s, and they become the victims of the TMT by following Akel's policies, which was Enosis. So I think it was obvious that there is no one in the Turkish Cypriot Cyprus society could accept the agenda of Enosis. Doesn't matter if it's going to be leftist leadership or nationalist leadership. It was obvious for the Turkish Cypriots, and I think Akel chose between two sides. Which one we're going to follow? Just forget about the Enosis and earning the Turkish Cypriot society, or we're going to chase the or tail the Magarios movement. So they chose the Magarios movement. That's why I think in the 60s, basically, Turkish Cypriot left movement started to rebuild itself over nothing. Because when you think about the first generations, the old leadership was murdered. The maybe not leadership, but the other members of the organization were moved to England. So there was only few persons in the Cyprus who can take the lead to just rebuild the movement. When it comes to 70s, we see that even Andros said in 70s, EDEC started to grow. There's another organizations started to take the role in the Cyprus policies history. But when we look at the situation, even the revolutionary organization, which was then the youth organizations of the party, there is nothing between who can make a bridge between these societies and can do to make all these people to come together and just fight against the new situation. So maybe I could say over here that the thing that how our organization look, even though we talk about the 50th anniversary of the invasion of Turkey, we see that the invasion of Cyprus is not only by Turkey. I think Cyprus is occupied by the imperialism. In the north, you can see Turkey as the power of imperialism. But we don't see only the northern part of the Cyprus is occupied. Even the shape of this occupation is changing compared between the sides, the north and the south. I think there is still the control of the imperialism in the both sides of the Cyprus. Maybe the volume of this occupation of imperialism is much more than compared to south, especially when you look at the situation. But I think our organization sees the situation. The whole island is under the occupation of imperialism. So imperialism actually solve its own problem. And after 74, what they're trying to do is to just make him some new small changes about the new situation. And they're gonna establish their own system about the Cyprus problem. So maybe we can just talk about a little bit, what can we do now? In 2024. As I mentioned before, even though we like it or not, the Cyprus history just appears that there is two folk in Cyprus. I want to mention, it's not something like, oh, it's proud, perfect. Thank God that this happened like this. We say it appears. It's just saying the name of the situation. We just mentioning it. We don't say it is the perfect situation. But the history shows that there are two people in Cyprus, which is Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot. And I think the Marxist organization should overlook the situation not only from the legal or the law conditions of the new process. What we have to look from the perspective which was legitimacy. Because if we're gonna start to look over this perspective, even though we don't like this separation in division for 50 years, there is clear situation about the Turkish Cypriots has got their own tensions or claims, and Greek Cypriot has got their own agenda as well. So what should we do is, I think, first of all, we should accept there are two folk in Cyprus, because as long as we don't accept this reality, we can't talk anything about political rights of this size. Even though I know it sounds and seems sympathetic, we say, oh, we all Cypriots. You talk Τουρκοκύπριακά, εγώ talk Ελληνοκύπριακά, so any πρόβλημα, nothing happened. But the reality is not something like this. Because when we look to the situation, mostly that it is obvious that we can see when there is Cypriot, it means mostly only Cypriot. So I think we should stop about pretending like there is only one Cypriot. Right now, there is no Cypriotism. Being Cypriot is the aim that we can achieve to come together as accepting ourselves with there are two political sides in the Cyprus. Because if we don't accept this reality, I want to mention it again, maybe it's going to be third or fourth time, but we like it or not, this is the reality. I hope that it shouldn't be happen like this, but the history already passed. So right now we have to accept the reality. There are two folks in the Cyprus. So we're going to accept there are different political rights or claims about the Cyprus problem. So we can start from that point about to accept the different claims of these two sides. After that, we're gonna start to discover how we're gonna achieve about this claim. For our organization, even though we accept the negotiations between the leadership are important, and we have to do something about them as well, we accept we can only achieve peace in Cyprus only by the class approach struggle. Because even though the leadership doesn't matter, Tatar, Christodilides, or it could be Anastasiadis, or Akıncı, doesn't matter who's going to be the leadership. Even though they agreed about a plan or they sign an agreement, we, as Marxists, we accept the peace is not something that you can achieve over a signature that you put on an agreement. The peace agreement is going to be in the brains and the hearts of the people, which could only achieve by the class approach struggle of all Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. That's why in the north, we are saying we have to give a struggle by the class approach mentality, and not only because I don't know if it is same in South, but mostly, especially after the collapse of Soviet Union, being leftist in the Turkish Cypriot community is turning to, if you just support peace, you are leftist. We are saying being leftist is not something about how you just approach to the national problem. We are saying being leftist is all about if you just claim the rights of the workers or the oppressed people. And also, when we look at the particular situation of Cyprus problem, that all leftists should support the peace in Cyprus, and the method of is the need that what we need is right now is a federation. So I think even though Cyprus problem is so important for all of the Cypriots, I mean Turkish and Greek Cypriots, it's not something like that we can achieve to that goal only by waiting or hoping for an agreement or some solution. We say we should get organized in the society over the hardness of the simple people who don't have their jobs or who don't have lesser amounts or all small piece of time to just enjoy their life. I think that's the way that how we're going to get organized in the societies. So what we're trying to do in the north is this one, and we're trying to always to just communicate between the Greek Cypriot organizations, because I think even though we accept that negotiations are important, I think the real peace is going to come after the root-based organizations over the two folks. That's why we are so happy to be here to just talk about how we see the Cyprus problem and how is our agenda about the future. I think everybody is also happy. So sorry about the weather conditions if I talk too much. Thank you for listening. Thanks.
We lost in time. 20 minutes. So maybe it's too hot. Shall we put the air conditioning here? It's too hot here. It's too hot. And please, if somebody wants to make any question first, and okay, I will write it down. We will take the questions, and after Andros or Ali, they are going to answer. Okay.
I'm not sure if
Andros, you are listening?
can you hear everything that I said, my friend?
Okay. Yes, and please, if somebody wants to make a contribution or a question, it has to come here, because if not, Το μικρόφωνο είναι εκεί.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank both our guest speakers, Ali and Andros, for a very educational speech. Okay. On the history of how we got here. Okay. Okay. All right. Stand closer. Yes, I'd like to thank Ali and Andros for the background, the history of how we got here, and the politics and the fact that certain parties were in support of the then government, which led to basically the whole system collapsing. The constitution failed because basically our side, my side, the Greeks, although I don't identify as a Greek, and I disagree with you about there's not such thing as a Cypriot, there is a Cypriot. I am a Cypriot.
Yes, I am a Cypriot as well, but it's a deep discussion.
And you are a Cypriot. Because it's a very toxic mix to talk about, to me, saying that I am a Greek Cypriot, or even worse, I am an Orthodox Christian. The whole, going back decades, is the fact that in Cyprus, as indeed in Greece, there's no separation between church and state. The educational system basically is taught according to what the church allows. So what does that mean? It means it's nationalism, it's religion, and everybody else is out of it. Very much as what is happening in Palestine at the moment. The Israeli, from the cradle to the grave, they are taught that they are the chosen people, they are the ones, and the Arabs count for nothing. Very similar situation here. That's what we've got to get over. The politics and the organizing is important. We have to do that. But at the Greek sport, I think the Greeks, we have a lot of lifting to do. A lot of lifting to do to get over this mentality. Thank you.
If you want to answer something, well, please come here because we cannot listen to you. And if you want to say your name and if you are in an organization, you want to mention from where you come from.
Hi. My question would be, how can we potentially recognize beyond our Cypriotness other people living in Cyprus? Because currently it's not just Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots. So my question would be, how can we include the so-called working class that we say that this is what needs to unite us? How can we actually mobilize beyond our Cypriotness? And yeah, just a side note, if I were to start with solving the Cyprus problem, would be learning each other's language, which is what we currently do in Hade. Hade is an intercommunal organization promoting peace and reconciliation in Cyprus. But we do that informally on the ground. But we see beyond our Cypriotness, and I think that's important because if we come up here and state our Cypriotness, I think that leaves nationalist membranes, let's say. So
Ethnic roots.
yes. So how can we see beyond our Cypriotness towards a solution to the Cyprus problem? This is my question. Next, please.
Thank you, Destina. Who else wants to make a question or a contribution? That was.
Andro, γεια σου. Δεν κατάλαβα. Andro, Daphnos. You can hear you. The mic is off.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. I want to address very, very briefly, not address, actually raise questions about three things. One is the whole notion of solving the Cyprus problem. As Andros mentioned, socialists are definitely for a solution, generally speaking. Nevertheless, those who are attempting to solve the problem are exactly the same people who created it. Therefore, our task as socialists within this context is not to be merely cheerleaders. Nico, Mustafa, come back with a solution. We have to create the guarantees that this solution will be functional. Talking especially about the Greek Cypriots, they have to guarantee, Greek Cypriot socialists have to guarantee the safety of the Turkish Cypriots as a whole. This is our task when talking about the solution. Nevertheless, solutions or non-solutions take place within a broader context. And here I will try to bring in the international context. The context is never static. It changes. Nowadays, it's taking a very dangerous downward shift. War everywhere, alliances shifting around. Death is on the horizon to such an extent that Cyprus is effectively part of this bloodshed when it comes to our specific region. I'm talking about Cyprus, not only the British bases, but the facilities provided by the Republic of Cyprus to Israel. Now, I don't want to go into that. It suffices to say that if we're living through these dangerous times where the notion of a nuclear war is discussed on YouTube, and what will happen, who will get extinct first and who second, I think we have to extend a bit our horizon, a bit more than what would a good solution to the Cyprus problem be. We have to address the issue first and foremost of peace. Peace is not an empty word nowadays. It's a slogan about which we have to mobilize. And peace has to be achieved and preserved even at the cost of the solution of the Cyprus. People tend to think in terms of we will solve the Cyprus problem and we will extract peace. This is not guaranteed at all. When did we have peace ever before in Cyprus? I'll tell you, it was in 1960. It took them 3 years to blow the whole thing up. 3 years. And then we were living under international conditions in an international environment which was far more calm and balanced. If you like, we had the security of the Cold War. The war was cold at the time. It wasn't hot as it is nowadays. I'm finishing. Nowadays, things are far, far more volatile, and therefore, although we should support the solution, do not rely on that solution. We have to fight for socialism, not as a potential after the solution, but in the here and now. Our task as socialists is not to solve the Cyprus problem. Our task is slightly different. What are our priorities? This is the question I am raising. We have shifted in a period which is very volatile. We have to address some of the basic premises that all of us set down again. I'll leave it at that.
I want to do two contributions. Just to don't need. So again, as you said it, until 50s, they were having this enosis idea, and also on the feminist perspective, they also shut down a union of women that existed by then. It was a women's union, Ενώσεις Εργαζομένων Γυναικών. It was an organization in all Cyprus, started from Varosha, and they were also organizing Turkish Cypriot women. I would love to discuss it with Turkish Cypriot women to know what stayed into the years. And what I can see is that this aspect of patriarchy and of pushing down the women was also a factor that was taking the power out of the communities. And yes, I believe that if we had a stronger women's movement throughout all the years, starting from the 50s, because Akel stopped this union on the 48, it would be different. So yes, and also what about Women Walk Home? It was an organization of women, started from 74, and they went, I think, 15 years. I don't know the Turkish Cypriot side point of view on this movement of women. I would like to hear some comments on this, because it's also part of the history, not only the youth movements. So thank you.
Ama çok böyle şey veremeyeceğimiz şeye girme.
Yok olabilir.
Sade bir şekilde.
Yeah, I talk in Turkish and I will translate.
Thank you.
So we'll give
Adını
you
da
10
söyleyesin ama.
minutes. 5 for the contribution and 5 for the translation. Okay.
Ben Münir Rahmancıoğlu, Bağımsızlık Yolu Mali Sekreteriyim.
He is Münir from our party, Bağımsızlık Yolu. He is the financial secretary of the party.
Öncelikle her iki konuşmacının da konuşmasını beğeniyle takip ettiğini söylemek isterim.
First of all, that I want to mention that I follow both of these speakers with sympathies, their speech.
Andros Yoldaş'ın söylediği benim bildiğim EDEK'le ilgili 74 sonrası detaylara çok hakim değildim. Ama onun dışında tarihe dair benim bildiğim her konuyla ilgili olarak kelime kelime bütün söylediklerine tamamen katıldığımı belirtmek isterim.
I want to mention especially about comrade Andros that mentioned about the EDEC process, that he agreed that what he says, because I didn't know much about after the 74 process of the EDEC, but as I read, I agree with the speech of the Andros, especially say for before 74.
Ve çıkarılan dersler bakımından da genel bir teorik yaklaşım olarak Andros'a tamamen katılıyorum.
As a theoretical perspective, I totally agree with the Andros that all about the lessons that we should take after the historical process.
Bu söylediklerimin Ali için de geçerli olduğunu biliyorum. Çünkü bu bizim partimizin de pozisyonu aynı zamanda.
What I'm going to say right now is going to be also accepted by Ali because this is the official positions of our party.
Eğer konuşmalar sırasında Ali'nin konuşmasında perspektif olarak biraz daha farklı bir noktadan bir bakış varmış gibi görünüyorsa bunun sebebi yaşananların Kıbrıslı Türklerin durduğu yerden nasıl yaşandığına dair. Kıbrıslı Türk sosyalistlerin değil, Kıbrıslı Türk sıradan insanların yaşadığı yerden nasıl yaşandığına dair olmasından dolayıdır.
Even though it seems different what Ali says, which means what I say, between the perspective of all crowded here, but it is cause of not from the view of Turkish Cypriot socialist people, especially from the view of the simple persons of the Turkish Cypriot community over what they had been through until now.
Böyle şöyle örneklemek isterim bunu. Andros 1950'li ve 60'lı yıllarda Akel'in yaptığı hatalardan ve bunun aslında bizi bugüne getiren sürecin bir noktası olduğundan bahsetti.
Andros mentioned that the mistakes that made by Akel, especially in the 50s and the 60s, that concluded the conditions that we have today.
Bunun
Andros, can you hear? Okay, no problem. Huh? Okay.
Bunun Kıbrıslı Türkler açısından bir örneğini vermek isterim size.
I want to give an example about this situation from the view of the Turkish Cypriots.
CMC'de yaşanan ortak grev ve 1958 yılında yapılan ortak 1 Mayıs gösterisi. Hepiniz biliyorsunuzdur Kıbrıs tarihinden.
Probably you all know from the Cyprus history, there were a common strike in CMC mines in 48 made by the Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, and the last common May Day in 58 before the 74.
1 Mayıs 58'in hemen ardından Türk milliyetçileri Kıbrıslı Türk sosyalistlere yönelik olarak Akel'le birlikte iş yapan, Teo'yla birlikte iş yapan Kıbrıslı Türk sosyalistlere yönelik olarak büyük bir saldırı başladı.
Just after the last May Day in 58, he just started a big attack.
Öldürülenler oldu, yaralananlar oldu.
There were ones that who get murdered or wounded.
Ve Akel'in Kıbrıslı Türk sosyalistlere söylediği tek şey, sizi isterseniz İngiltere'ye kaçırabiliriz oldu.
And the only thing that mentioned by Akel that we can just transfer you to UK if you want.
Bunun Andros'un söylediklerine çok iyi bir örnek olduğunu düşünüyorum. Özellikle bir milis kuvveti barındırmama iradesini ısrarla tutması ya da genel olarak bütün Kıbrıs halklarının ya da o dönem için Kıbrıs halkının temsiliyeti için değil, Makaryos'un politikalarına destek olmaya yaklaşma anlamında bir örnek olduğunu düşünüyorum.
I think it's a good example about what Andros said, that every political organization have their own militia power, but the only one that who didn't have this kind of power was Akel, and that was the reason that why that the party just followed the Makarios policies and become a tail of Makarios movement. It's a good example about that what Andros said.
Çok detaya girmeyeceğim uzatmamak için ama Andros'un söylediklerinden bir nokta beni çok memnun etti. Özellikle de self determinasyon hakkıyla ilgili olandı.
I'm not going to be into too much deep details, but one of the things that Andros said was just made me so happy, especially that he mentioned the right of self-determination of the Turkish Cypriot.
Ama şunun altını çizmem gerekiyor ki bizim açımızda self-determinasyon hakkı Kıbrıs'ın birleşmesi, insanların yeniden kardeşleşmesi ve adanın bağımsızlığı yönünde kullanılmalıdır.
For us, the self-determination right of the Turkish Cypriot should be appeal for the agenda of unify island again and becoming all Greek and Turkish Cypriots make brothers and sisters again and create
Independence of the
and for the independence of the island.
Yani Lenin'in de dediği gibi boşanma hakkını savunmak, boşanmayı savunmak demek değil.
As Lenin said, to just supporting the right of divorceness is not something like you support divorce. But if you don't give the right of divorceness, you can't talk about a free marriage or free relation.
Şimdi şu an geldiğimiz yerde belki de iki konuşmacının da dile getirmediği ama ikisinin de katılacağını düşündüğüm üçüncü bir aslında ikiye bölünmüş gibi konuştuk ama aslında adamımızın üçe bölünmüş olduğunu ve bir önemli parçanın da İngiliz üsleri olduğunu altını çizmemiz lazım.
We also mention we should also mention right now, I think even though both of the speakers didn't mention, but I think both of them are agreed, the island is not only divided into two parts, it is divided into three parts, which is all English bases, British bases.
Bu noktada adamımızı yeniden birleştirmek ve halklarımızı tek bir halk haline dönüştürebilmek için ne yapmalıyız?
So at that point, what should we do or to make our people to come together and just create them as one people of all Cyprus?
Teorik politik kısmı Andros tarafından ve Ali tarafından ifade edildiği ben örnek vereceğim.
Theoretical and political part of this question is already mentioned. I mean, the answers just given by Andros and Ali. I'm just going to give an example.
Kıbrıs'ın güneyinde emekçi insanların yaşadığı kira sorununun çok büyük bir benzeri Kıbrıs'ın kuzeyinde de yaşanıyor.
The rent problem of the all working class that had been through in the southern part of the Cyprus, which is similarly happening in the northern part of the Cyprus as well.
Çok yakın geçmişte özelleştirme ile iki toplum da yüzleşti ve mücadeleler verdi.
In very close process, the two communities had been the process of privatization and they had been same problems and they faced these kind of conclusions of these problems.
Yemek dağıtım işçilerinin sendikalaşma mücadelesini yaptıkları eylemleri yakından takip ettik ve biz Kıbrıs'ın kuzeyinde neredeyse hiçbir sendikanın olmadığı, özel sektörde sendikanın olmadığı koşullarda bu deneyimleri paylaşmak, hem kuzeyde anlatmak hem burada dinlemek istiyoruz.
We had been follow the protest, the demonstrations of the food delivery workers demonstrations. We just follow them very closely. We want to just express these experiments in the northern part of the island, and we would like to listen these kind of experiments in from the comrades in the south.
Bunları uzatabilirim ama yapmamız gereken her iki halkın içerisindeki emekçi insanlara yaşadıkları sorunların benzer sorunlar olduğunu göstermek.
So the examples could be much more, but simply what should we do is to show all of the people, I mean in the two sides, we should show them that all the problems that we have all common and similar.
Düşmanlarımızın farklı etnik kimliklerde olsalar da aslında aynı sınıfa mensup olduklarını, Kıbrıslı Türk ve Kıbrıslı egemen sınıflar olduğunu göstermek.
Even the enemies are coming from the different ethnic groups. We should show to the people they are from the same ruling class roots.
Ve bu egemen sınıfları aşıp adamımızı birleştirmediğimiz sürece sınıfsal kurtuluşumuzun da mümkün olmadığını göstermek.
even we just come over this ruling class, we can't be gonna be successful about the real salvation of all working class of Cyprus is not gonna come.
Son cümlemi bizim kuzeyde çok sık kullandığımız bir cümleyle bitirmek istiyorum. Biz işçi sınıfının kurtuluşunun Kıbrıs sorunundan sonra olmayacağını, Kıbrıs sorununun çözümünün ancak işçi sınıfının kurtuluşuyla birlikte olabileceğini söylüyoruz. Bunu birlikte, bu sesi birlikte yükseltmemiz gerekiyor.
My last words gonna be with the ones that we mostly use in the northern part of the Cyprus. We don't think the salvation of the working class is gonna come after the solution of Cyprus problem. We think that the Cyprus solution gonna come with the salvation of the working class.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Dimos and Chris and Tanikos. And Athena, okay. Dimos?
So, hello to everyone. My name is Dimos. I'm gonna speak on behalf of DN25 in Cyprus. I would like to, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming here for this event. This is a very positive gather for our common leftist movement, especially after the recent positive news from France. And unfortunately, the very negative situation in Gaza, the genocide. Secondly, I would like to thank the other organizations for organizing this event. So, at the beginning of the event, as DN25 in Cyprus, we talked historically about the Cypriot issue. Now I'm gonna mention a few points about the today and the near future based on our political program. Our political program, which has been produced collectively here in Cyprus and voted by 1,000 members of DN25 in Europe. So what we propose as DN25 in Cyprus to resist fascism and partition, a progressive vision that transcends the ethnic and religious differences of the two communities, to place the class consciousness and struggle above all. Secondly, to rebuild trust between the two communities through political cooperation, common causes, common rallies, common political actions and events like today, and a common anti-fascist movement. To emphasize the discussion of citizens instead of the diplomacy of governments, the common struggle of the Greek and Turkish Cypriot and the rest of the island communities for a better tomorrow. The solution requires coexistence and cooperation. This will not cultivate it from the top to down, but from the bottom to the up. At this point, we propose the creation of a bi-communal council composed of Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriots, respectively, democratically elected with the participation of our academics, party members, and ordinary citizens, which will be responsible for setting the policy and framework for unification our island. Another point is to strengthen bi-communalism as a concept of mutual understanding and daily fighting practice, to promote the culture of peace and the historic common struggles for working class rights that we had, which were fought together many decades ago, not the nationalist fairy tale of national heroes and national symbols of each side. We also propose the immediate establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, whose work will be supported by the appropriate framework and which will work of communities, a restoration of the truth in order to reunite our island and harmonious coexistence of communities. Scientific researchers, past researchers can confirm the positive impact of such commissions. And lastly, our vision is a Cyprus without armies, without bases, without guarantors, with equal rights for all its citizens. The federal solution of the Cyprus problem with political equality must be based on the complete demilitarization of the island, with the withdrawal of British bases and troops, the dismantling of the army of the Republic of Cyprus, and the withdrawal of Greek and Turkish military forces. Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Chris. I'm here to represent AFOA, which is an organization, a community of struggle that started last year, mainly in the north, but we're looking to mobilize people in the north, in the south, and we're looking to mobilize people in the north. Just 3 quick points, because it's already quite late. And also because it was partially, some of these points were partially covered by previous speakers. Point number 1 is the fact that we actually believe that we consider Cyprus not to be bi-communal. It's not 2 folks. It's many more in the 21st century. It's Greek Cypriots, it's Turkish Cypriots, it's Turkish people who have lived their whole life in Cyprus. Nowadays, we have asylum seekers, which is a considerable population, which needs to be taken into account, especially from a socialist and leftist perspective. Refugees, migrants, all these people need to be part of the vision of a socialist or a leftist vision for a more just society in Cyprus. Point number 2, and it's what Dimos actually said, and I'm really going to quickly reiterate, is that for better or worse, we kind of left the leadership in the north and the south to figure it out until 2017, roughly, to figure out a solution for us. But it looks like this didn't work. So we need to go back to building a bottom-up solution, not from the top to the bottom. So things may seem dire right now, but it seems that we are in the point of sowing the seeds towards a solution from the bottom up, in terms of instead of waiting for a solution to come from the sky, let's say. And my last point is about intersectionalism, which is another point that was partly covered previously. And we believe that in the 21st century version of leftist politics needs to cover a multifaceted vision of a society. It should cover feminist perspectives, should cover perspectives in favor of migrant rights, should cover perspectives of a free Palestine, and should cover perspective, of course, of a Cypriot society that encapsulate all these points. I won't talk any further. I think these are the 3 points I need to cover. Thank you very much.
After please, Ross Panicos.
Sì, errore.
Hi everybody. I prefer to have a translation. I can express myself better in Greek than English. Ανάμεσα στους Ελληνοκύπριους, και στην ελληνοκυπριακή κοινότητα υπάρχει σήμερα μια προσπάθεια από τους φασίστες να διαγράψουν το πραξικόπημα και τι προηγήθηκε της εισβολής.
In the Greek Cypriot society today, especially in the far right, there is an attempt to delete the coup and what happened before the invasion.
Και να τα ρίξουν όλα στην εισβολή για την Τουρκία. Ότι φταίει η Τουρκία και η εισβολή.
And to blame for everything Turkey and the invasion of Turkey in Cyprus.
Ιστορικά για αυτό το ζήτημα υπάρχουν πολλές ευθύνες για το πώς φτάσαμε σήμερα σε αυτόν το κατάσταση.
Historically, there are a lot of responsibilities, a lot of blame to be given on how we ended up in this situation.
Κύρια στο ΑΓΕΡ,
Especially in Akel.
το οποίο συνεργαζόταν για χρόνια με δεξιές κυβερνήσεις και ανεχόταν την πολιτική αυτή.
Because they were collaborating for many years with right-wing governments and they were tolerating this policy.
Όμως δεν θα επεκταθώ πάνω σε αυτόν άλλο. Θα ήθελα να πω ότι αυτή είναι η τακτική του φασισμού πάντοτε, είναι να στρέφει την προσοχή του κόσμου μακριά από τα κοινωνικά προβλήματα στα εθνικά, ούτω λεγόμενο εθνικά προβλήματα.
I will not say more details about it, but I think that but the point I want to make is that this is a tactic of fascism that turns the perspective of the people, of the working people, away from the problems to a nationalist or national cause or problem.
Και ήθελα να πω ότι η απάντηση σε αυτούς, η πραγματική απάντηση, είναι να οργανωθούμε και να προβάλλουμε τα κοινωνικά και εργατικά προβλήματα και να τα διεκδικήσουμε μαζί.
The real answer to this policy is to organize and to fight our social and workers' rights. Yeah, and fight these rights and together. Yes.
Ο Άλλη είχε πει ότι ο φυσικός διαχωρισμός, ότι του φυσικού διαχωρισμού στην Κύπρο προηγήθηκε ο κοινωνικός και ο κοινοτικός διαχωρισμός. Ο διαχωρισμός δηλαδή στον τρόπο σκέψης και στις επαφές τις κοινωνικές.
Ali said that before the natural, not the natural, but the physical separation of the people came the social and our thought separation of how we were thinking about each other.
Η επανένωση θα αρχίσει ακριβώς με τον αντίστροφον τρόπο. Δηλαδή μέσα από τον κοινό τρόπο σκέψης και αντιμετώπισης των προβλημάτων μας.
So the reunification will start in the opposite way, by rethinking the problems together.
Οι αστεί, οι κεφαλαιοκράτες, έχουν ένας από τους λόγους ή ο κύριος λόγος της δημιουργίας του κυπριακού προβλήματος, του λατινικού, είναι τα συγκρουόμενα συμφέροντα των αστικών τάξεων.
One of the reasons of the classes of the ruling elites are the conflicting interests that they have on the island.
Και το γεγονός ότι θέλουν να διοικούν τα δικά τους έθνη κράτη.
And the fact that they want to rule their own nation states.
Από την αντίθετη πλευρά, η εργατική τάξη και οι κοινωνικές δυνάμεις, τα κοινωνικά κινήματα, έχουν κοινά συμφέροντα.
On the opposite side, the working class and the movements, the social movements have common interests.
Η εργατική τάξη έχει κοινά συμφέροντα.
The working class has common interests.
Το περιβαλλοντικό κίνημα έχει κοινά συμφέροντα.
The environmental movement has common interests.
Το κίνημα των γυναικών και το ΛΟΑΤΚΙ έχει κοινά συμφέροντα.
The movement of the LGBT people and the women's movement have common interests.
Πρέπει να δούμε πώς θα οργανώσουμε αυτά τα κοινά συμφέροντα και να τα διεκδικήσουμε μαζί.
We have to see how we can organize these common interests and fight for them together.
Ευχαριστώ. I would like to say that my name was Panikos and I was talking I'm a member of NEDA.
Okay, somebody else wanted to speak?
It seems like only one question till now. Huh?
Yes.
All of them are only contributions.
So you have to speak on behalf of the contributions as well, don't you? Hello, comrades. Thank you very much for this meeting. I think it's an amazing meeting. I wanted to say some things on behalf of NEDA, but I want mainly to contribute in this discussion because I think that it's very fruitful and finally one contribution adds up to the other and I don't need to repeat so many things. I want to say that first of all, we agree with all that is being said by the introductions and the speakers on behalf of the groups. It's true that, and even today, we see that 50 years after, the left has not come to the conclusions that are necessary so that we can move forward. And when I talk about the left, I mean Akel that we talked about before, but other groups from the left that either belonged in EDEC in the past or even in Akel and they left now because of other ideological problems. It's unfortunate when a left force would say that the Cyprus problem is just a problem of invasion. It's very problematic. It's not left. It cannot be left, in my opinion. They cannot just say that it's a betrayal. Who betrayed what? I mean, why we expected that the junta would do something different towards the Greek Cypriot population or Cyprus in total. It's not just colonialism. It is partly colonialism. It is because of imperialism, but it's not only that. And I think Ali put it very nicely that he said we had an external influence and problem, and we had the internal influence and problem, and it's true, and we have to fight in all these levels. So we do need to see the international perspective. We cannot solve the national question or live peacefully, because I think that's the point, on the island without looking at the international situation. So we need to be internationalists internally and externally and to manage to fight in all the fronts that we see in front of us together, united as Panikos also said before. I want to stress a couple of points like the one that is nationalism we mentioned before. This is a very important job that has to be done, even 20 years after the opening of the checkpoints. And even though there was a discussion at that time of the left that now that we opened the checkpoints, the interaction will just delete nationalism, this is not true. We see forces, new nationalist forces and new far-right forces growing in the south, especially in places that they don't see the Turkish Cypriots, like in Limassol, in Paphos, but also in Nicosia. It's not that we live in an anti-nationalist bubble here or in the Rinia, etc. especially in Meridian. We see the far right growing. We see phenomena like Elam, who is a total and clear neo-Nazi party, to be the third in the parliament. And if it was not from Fidias, which is another far-right phenomena in the Euro elections, they would be the third party also in the Euro elections. And Fidias is part of the far-right. He used to be a member of Elam, and he has exactly the same rhetoric that the far-right had in the 60s. We have to isolate the Turkish Cypriots. We have to be so much more better economically, so to make them accept our solution. That's exactly what he says. And this is very dangerous because it creates a nationalism, pride, which is not necessary, which is not based on reality, even if the gas will be explored or extracted. The Greek Cypriot working class will not be better off, will not be richer, will not be living in a paradise. It will be exploited. It will be living with peanuts. It will be out of their houses, etc. The other thing I want to stress is something that some of the speakers put, and I find it very interesting, and I agree with that, and I think that we need to raise this issue. It's about the two folks. It's very interesting, and I think that is very important as well, because we had this problem in the past when we were saying, even by passing that the two folks are happening, we had a resistance from AKEL members, especially saying, no, we are one folk, and we want to fight for liberation. That's it. So we are the good ones, that we fight for liberation of the poor ones, the poor Turkish Cypriots, that they are under the occupation. Yes, we are two folks, and I think that we can see how we can discuss about multiple folks, because in reality, the working class in both sides of the island is not Greek Cypriot only, it's not Turkish Cypriot only, it's multicultural. And there are children now that they may come from one Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot parent. There are children that they don't have any Cypriot. I mean, originally, from the 20 or 30 years ago, coming to Cyprus, and they declare that they are Cypriots, right? I mean, there are people that they are born on the island, they know nothing else, and it's been 50 years that this is happening. And now they will not be able to take the citizenship. So we need to put this point, we need to have this point in our struggle. If we want to be united, even though, the way that the island is divided now, yes, the two main communities would be the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriot that need to open this dialogue in order to find a solution for the national question. These two communities that have to include the people, the working class that doesn't have the ethnic background of the Greek Cypriot and the Turkish Cypriots. They have to open up in all this. People. And final point, because I think I speak a lot, is about the solution. When we speak as NEDA, and I understand as the rest of the forces today here about the solution, we're not talking about what Christodoulidis and Tatar will bring now. They will not bring a solution, even if they are called Stefanu and what is the name of the CTP leader now? I don't remember. Tufan. Again, it will not be a solution, right? It will be a change of the character of the national question. Maybe there will be more open checkpoints, I'm saying, or not, or more closed checkpoints. Maybe there will be more things in Turkish in the south. I don't know. I'm just saying that they will not and they cannot bring the solution because they express these conflicting interests of the ruling elites of the two sides, these conflicting interests of the international and imperialist forces that are involved around the island and around the wealth of the island. So they will never bring a solution and they will never bring peace. So now, we said that the working class will bring peace through and solution through the collaboration. I don't want to say that, to repeat that, but I want to say that in the history, when we saw, we never had peace on the island. When was this peace? I mean, even though the nationalism expressed politically in the 50s or even in the 30s with the first big protests for uniting Cyprus with Greece that were organized by the church in 1931, for example. The nationalism, as Ali said, that were dictated and discussed from the educational system and from the through the help of the British, let's say, they were putting the seeds of this division of the population. So there was no actual peace, because when you see the other as the object of your exploitation, or you feel superior to the other, etc., there is no peace. It's not a peaceful interaction and coexistence. And this we have to build. This is very difficult. It's not easy, but we need to strive for it. We need to put forward all our forces against fascism, against racism and nationalism, etc. And very last point, extremely last point, is about the illusions that the left had, and it was discussed as well from the other speakers, to the progressive ruling class. Because Akel signed on nationalism because they were collaborating, they were a popular front. That was the idea, that we collaborate with the progressive ruling elite. So they couldn't say no to nationalism, or they didn't want to say no to nationalism because they were collaborating with the specific forces in order to be legal. Akel was never from the beginning a left-wing party. But what we are striving, because as it was said, the left, Akel, CTP, was in the governments in the past. So this idea that one party in the government can change the situation is gone. It will not happen. What we are striving, and we did it we are fighting for it with NEDA and with DM25 and with other forces in the south, is to build this united front of the left and of the working class groups in order to give this answer, this alternative of who we want to take power, let's say, in both sides of the divide, and can bring actually conditions that will develop peace and that will build peace. And I want to say that on that account, today's meeting is very important for me, and I'm very happy that it's happening, because we have also representatives from Ευτοπία, from the feminist groups. We have representatives from Anatropy, which were not participating in the discussions, and NAFA, and we hope that we can continue these discussions. And of course, from our comrades, Pamsislikiolu, the Independence Path, very dear and important organization, we think, in the North, that we want to be together on this road for independence in order to fight for socialism and a socialist federation in Cyprus. Thank you.
So we have Umut, yeah. And if there is nobody else, we give to the speakers, to our some minutes to make a conclusion or to answer to any question that someone said.
Hello, Andros. I am Umut, General Secretary of Bağımsızlık Yolu. I wanted to talk about and add a little bit what Atina said about the two folks, actually. When we say Greek Cypriot community and Turkish Cypriot community as two folks, we are not mentioning as ethnic backgrounds. If you're a Marxist, you define folks or communities according to the socio-economic backgrounds and the structures. That's what we are talking about. So when Athena says that there are a lot of people coming from abroad and being Cypriot in a way, as they are, like living 30 or 50 years from. That's what we mean, actually. What I'm trying to say is identity divides and class unites. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's what my party is trying to express in all the points of whatever we are discussing, in the Cyprus issue or the socialism issue. Because there are people coming to our island from Bangladesh, from Asia, anywhere, or Africa, and they're coming here as working class, and they're part of the two folks working class. That's what we are talking about. And when we say we need to struggle against our ruling class, that's what we are trying to say. We need to work together as a class, and we need to push the boundaries. The thing that is that we have a deadlock in Cyprus problem. How we can break the deadlock is not coming from the top. It's coming from the bottom. And the bottom is the daily life problems. The problems with the housing, the problems with the education, the health, the transportation, energy, anything that happens in the daily life. That's what we're trying to do in North. To mobilize people to be subject of their own life's problems, to fight for those problems, fight together and struggle together. And with that fight, only we can be the subjects of our lives and to be an effective force surrounding us to implement and push and pressure the forces that are making our island as an imperialistic base for attacking Palestine, for example. And when we say Cyprus problem, it's not just Cypriot people or the people who are living in Cyprus. We're talking about a Middle Eastern problem here. We can see that British bases and Cyprus Republic is being used by French forces also and US forces also to make this war happen against Palestinian people. So it's not just about us, it's also about Mediterranean. And Middle East. And what we can do is what my comrades and Andros mentioned about maybe to make a force coming from downside is to work from daily life problems. Thank you.
Yeah, could be. Maybe Andros want to say something as well. Because he's been waiting there for a long time without saying anything. Yes.
If there is no other question or contribution, okay. Andros, how many minutes do you need to conclude?
5.
5, okay. Έχουμε φωνή. Μιλά, να ακούσουμε.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it. Comrades, there isn't much to say because there is so much agreement. I'm really impressed by this, to be honest, and of course I'm very happy about it. I think this meeting has been very good because it's had very rich discussion, but it also revealed a very high level of agreement. I was very, very happy to hear the positions of the Turkish comrades, of Ali, of Munur, and of Umut, whose positions are identical with the positions that myself and other Greek Cypriot comrades mentioned. There are, of course, many details, but I don't think there is a point in going into the details. It's important to stick to the main things. And the key issue, I think, here is that there is a common understanding and a common position, not only between us and the Turkish comrades, but also by other comrades like Dartmouth, etc., who explained that you cannot put the struggle for peace, for a solution to the national problem of Cyprus, which, however, is much broader. It involves Greece, it involves Turkey, it's a problem of the Middle East, as Umut said. You cannot put this as contradicting the struggle for socialism. Actually, it passes through this struggle. Then they need to mobilize the working class for a solution to the problem of war and the instability in the region. Struggle for peace goes hand in hand with the struggle to take power, change society for a socialist society. I think this is the most important, let's say, lesson, conclusion from the history of the national problem in Cyprus, which has only been drawn by new forces from the left. The old left, traditional left parties never came to such conclusions, and that's why conditions are created in a slow process, of course, to overcome these old parties and build new forces of the left. Victim, I think, was the name, raised the question of how do we approach the working class, etc. But I think that both Munur and Panikos touched upon it. We start with the problems. We start with the problems, we fight with the problems, we fight together with workers of the different layers, different professions. And of course, the meaning of the working class today is much broader than it used to be in the past, but it does represent the majority of the population in most countries on the planet, not only in Cyprus. Start with the problems, fight for the problems, campaign for the problems. But to do that, you need political forces. It's correct what Chris from Alpha said, that we want processes to start from the bottom, from below, and go up. But for such process to be started, you always need political forces to take the initiative. But political forces which have internal democracy and which respect the democratic procedures in the movements. In this way, there can be a feedback from below, and there can be, let's say, a dialectical process. I think one point that we very much agree is what was mentioned about the fact that in Cyprus there are two people, two folks, two communities. We have to recognize that even if we don't like it. This is very important because it's not how we feel. Because I know many Turkish Cypriot friends and comrades, and many Greek Cypriots friends and comrades who say, I'm not Greek, I'm not Turkish, I'm Cypriot. That's fair enough. But these people, we are a very small minority. The mass of the population has a different consciousness, and we have to accept it. And if we want to convince the two sides, the two people, that it's possible to work together to establish peace on a permanent and secure basis, then we have to recognize the right of self-determination. And this means that the minority on the island, the Turkish Cypriots, they have the decisive say on what kind of structure, what kind of form the future state of worker state, socialist state should have. Nothing should be imposed. I can't remember which comrades put it emphatically, that the Turkish Cypriots must feel safe as against the majority community. So I leave it here. It was a very good meeting. I was more than happy to listen to the different comrades and see the extent of agreements. And I'm sure we are going to meet again and continue this discussion, comrades.
Actually, I'm going to make a short conclusion about this part of event, and maybe I can answer the question, which is so important for me because it was the only question for me. Maybe I can start from the question because actually Andros already gave the answer for to that question for myself, because it seems really, as I mentioned, that it seems really sympathetic and it sounds really sympathetic that forget about all ethnic roots and details about that separate us from black, white, blondie, or doesn't matter. We are all human. Yeah, it sounds really sympathetic. I accept that we are all human. And if we are Marxists, we should accept as a basic that we are all the part of the humanity who can be liberated by this struggle of the working class. This is a fact that we have to accept. But if it's going to be that easy, I think it could be achieved even many, many years before. Because there are lots of details, problems in the life. Ethnic problems, national questions, or gender problems, LGBT problems, environmental problems. It goes really long. So even though as socialists, we accept that we are part of working class, or we are all Cypriot, we are all the compatriots of the one island. In daily life, we're going to see there's a huge problems about that we have to give an answer. And if you're going to give that answer, you're going to be seen as a dreamer. It may be with the good intentions, but it's going to be only a good dream about, this guy is a crazy, that he accepts everybody, whatever. But I think the socialists must give real examples to the real problem. I want to give you one example about my grandfather. My grandfather from Carpathia, he passed away 3 years ago. He was the first member of TMT in the village. First member. He wasn't even so educated, actually, compared to the crowd of the village or Go. He finished 2 primary school, one Greek, one Turkish. So he was the only one that could read and talk Greek and Turkish at the same time. He was the first guy that joined into the TMT. I asked him, because I don't know if you heard about the TMT members, don't talk too much about the, especially because of the sword that made, they don't talk too much. I asked him that, why did you join to TMT, especially as the first one in the village? Did something happen around Carpathia? No, he said to me, but I heard from the news, from the radio, that something going on in the, especially the Nicosia side. So he said to me, I think that we should do something about getting organized, because I asked him if any EOKA attacks that happen, especially in the region. He said to me, I didn't hear. Actually, I read from the books that EOKA members killed, especially the Greek Cypriots in the Carpathia side, the traitors according to them, and few English as well. And my grandfather, even though there was no attack to the Turkish Cypriots, he says, we were concerning about the life of the Turkish Cypriots, especially in the Karpas region, because we were just surrounded by lots of Greek Cypriot villages. We were only a few villages. And this man was a tailor, actually. And the Masre was a Greek Cypriot. Yeah. And in our village, the main language was Greek. My grandmother learned Turkish after he got married with my grandfather. You know what happened? My grandfather said to me, especially in the 70s, it must be in 70s, he said to me, at the beginning of 70s, because there was no fight between Turks and Greeks, only the Grivas, Eoga Vida, and the Magario supporters were fighting each other. So we should have the chance to go into the official government and to get the payment because of lack of raining at that period. Yeah. He went to Vasily, right now the name is Ziamet. He saw his Masre there because the Masre was from that village. And the Masre, when he saw him, oh, Giriarem Zika, Losori se la gatse, Napjumenena Gafe, And he said to my grandfather, Remzimu, I want to see you because I'm going to go to London. Before I'm going to go, I want to see you, but I heard about you don't let us go into the village. You go into our village. Why don't you let us to go into your village? And my grandfather said, do you let us to go into Agrades? Agrades was a military base in Yeşilköy. I can't remember the original name. It was a mixed village, actually. But there was a military base of Greek army there. Do you let us to go in there? And the master said, right, it's a military base. How are you going to go there? So, because my grandfather was like Balligari at the period, and he was saying, right, every Turkish village is a military base as well, yeah? At that point, the master said, oh, you want Krivas to cut all of you, but you are lucky that he is busy with Magarios. Yeah? I don't say it's a big thing, yeah, because I can't blame only Greek Cypriot, because I think they're all Voskos. And you know what happened? He started to say, Revi, don't afraid you. Turkey is just supporting us. Turkey is supporting us. Greece is supporting us as well, the master said. Then they started to count whose brother is much stronger. They said, Greece is nothing, right? Nothing going to happen against Turkey. But Russians are supporting us as well. Right now my grandfather just losing the fight. Americans are going to fight for us as well. Yeah? And they were ready to call everybody to come to this island like two small kids. My brother going to beat you. If your brother going to come, my father going to come. An uncle going to come. End of the day, especially for the Turkish Cypriots, there is no right to talk about the future of our island or our life. But what I mentioned about that story is the concern of my grandfather was real. And I don't say he was the best thing that he did, but the concern was real. So we should look from that perspective for the question. I don't want to talk about who is Turkish Cypriot or who is Greek Cypriot. I don't want to talk either. But the life gonna bring that question every day to you and to me as well. Not only that question, there are lots of guys or children that come to North Cyprus or born Cyprus that originally rose from Turkey, but they've been living in Northern Cyprus for 50 years. And maybe 90% of these persons are working class families, children. What I'm gonna do about them? I'm gonna say you are settlers, illegal settlers. But that's why I said in the first speech, for a Marxist, the laws is in the second term. First, legitimacy is the one. If they are part of this island for 50 years, doesn't matter if they come over the invasion. I know it's illegal. I accept for the according to the laws, they are settlers. But they've been here for 50 years. What we're going to do? So as Marxists, what we should do is to just focus on the real concerns, real problems. Wherever these problems are, we're going to be there. If they're not going to be there, the fascists going to be there. That's what I think. And that's my conclusion.
I have to thank you all about your passion to stay here for so many long 2 hours quite. Unfortunately, they didn't answer your question about the feminist groups, but anyway, we have a bicommunal feminist group, and we think that our problems are common and our fight should be common also. The name is actually sorry, στα ελληνικά είναι μαχητικές και ελεύθερες. So we are very open to common struggles. Yeah, okay. So we can speak about this in other occasions if you like. And anyway, 2 announcements. We have some food. Maybe it's not enough for everybody, but if you want, it's there. We can sell you. And then I will say also that there is a very interesting camp in Greece, 26th of July to 4 of August. It's an international camp in a very nice place in Greece. So you can have discussions and international contacts with many people from abroad. And also, we're going to make a camp in Cyprus. We are calculating around the 2nd week of October. So everybody comes back from holidays, and we have to organize this. We do it all the time in the north because we have a lot of comrades that they come from Turkey and they're not allowed to cross. So you are very welcome. Of course, after this discussion, we should see how to meet again and how to collaborate, because we think it's very important that we met together tonight. But anyway, we have also this project, which is going to be with discussions and sharing and get to know each other and see the future with some, how do you say, more hope. Because if not, the fascists are going to come. So please. We're very open to discussions and of course to any democratical procedures to share opinions and see how to go forward. Thank you very, very much.